great?
Thank you, Terry.
You're faithful, man. Thank you. So, during Jesus' public ministry, he was confronted frequently with a problem, and that problem was the problem of gossip. And it was generally perpetuated by the religious establishment, the Pharisees. And a great example of that is in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 12. Jesus had just healed a demon-possessed man, and the Pharisees reacted to that by spreading a rumor. And the rumor is reported in Matthew 12:24. This man cast out demons only by Beelzebul, that's Satan, a ruler of the demons. So the Pharisees started a vicious rumor that when Jesus cast demons out of someone, he was doing it by the power of Satan. Doing it by the power of Satan. So this is how Jesus responded. He said, that's how he responded to the accusation. But this is what he said about the gossip. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad, for the tree is known by its fruit. Get the message. You brood of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak what is good? For the mouth speaks out of that which fills the heart. The good man brings out of his good treasure what is good, and the evil man brings out of his evil treasure what is evil. But I tell you that every careless word that people speak, they shall give an accounting for it in the day of judgment.
Amen.
For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. That's a pretty heavy message. I don't know what the Pharisees said when he said that, or how they reacted, but I'm sure they didn't like it. To me, the most troubling thing about that passage, though, is that Jesus said hurtful talk starts in your heart. It starts in your heart. Now, we're all guilty of hurtful talk. We do it all the time. But the thought that it actually reveals your heart is really a heavy, heavy idea in my mind. Now, in the Bible, the heart isn't your heart. The heart is the seat of your existence. The heart is the center of your being. And so when Jesus says that the mouth speaks out of that which fills the heart, what he's saying is if what you're speaking out is ugly, your being is ugly. Wow, scary. So careless words, these are his words, careless words. I've said a few careless words lately, are sinful. And we will have to give an account for them at some point. Now this is something we're all guilty of. Hurtful words spoken to someone, like bullying, or hurtful words spoken behind someone's back, gossip. This is the problem we're going to talk about tonight. So it brings me to the question of when is the last time you spoke hurtful words? Well, I can tell you the last time I spoke hurtful words. I have witnesses. I stood up here last Wednesday night and without even thinking about this Bible study made the comment that I had been on the phone leaving a message for someone and all of a sudden the guy about took me out and I started in on him and I forgot to hang the phone up. So it was all recorded. I was a little edgy about that for a couple of days. But I talked to the guy I left a message for 2 or 3 times. He didn't say a word. He's a good guy. So, you know, each day, you know, scientifically, each day we speak thousands of words. We speak thousands of words. This is a high-risk area for us, as we're going to see from this study tonight. So, we're going to be in the Epistle of James. And there's an excellent passage on the danger of hurtful words, and that's what we're going to focus on tonight. And the impact of those words on others is something I really want to focus on tonight, because it's easy when we pop off to just get past it and not think about it. That's behind me. Let's move on. But we do not often understand the impact our words have on other people, and I want to talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to put to rest once and for all tonight the old saying that sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me, because it's a lie. Words are very, very hurtful. We can hurt people with our words.
But is the message about hurtful words?
We're going to get into hurtful words now. Gossip, negative. Yes. You'll have to be accountable for that. So we're going to talk about all of those things tonight.
A lot of power and sway amongst the people. One person's true, that's where one of the laws and commandments, thou shalt not bear false witness against your neighbor, brother. How's that go again? Shall not bear
Your neighbor.
false witness. The point I was trying to make is back then, words were very, very powerful, especially when spoken by someone who had power.
You know, look at them, we need the message.
So we're gonna talk about all of that. We're gonna talk about all of that tonight.
Perhaps another time I can elaborate on
Aren't
that.
they making,
Thank you very much for your,
is it in this passage?
Establishment, and their objection to Jesus was that he was talking about something new. He was not talking about what they were used to hearing, and so their way of dealing with him was to brand him a heretic. And to say when he cast out a demon in a sick person that he was doing that by the power of Satan was another way of just labeling him as a heretic. We don't want any part of him. He's a byproduct of Satan.
They're saying he's the son of Satan.
So,
Cast out devils by Beelzebub, March 2.
yeah, and it's a great Bible study in and of itself, how he responded to that and how he demonstrated the falsehood.
Satan cannot cast out Satan, for if he does, then his kingdom is
Right.
against itself.
Do you think that the Pharisees could be news reporters?
News reporters. That's possible.
You know, Abraham Lincoln quoted part of that Bible passage in the American Civil War period, saying the house divided itself against itself cannot stand.
Right.
Directly.
Directly from the words of Jesus. So we're in the Epistle of James tonight, and I just want to say a couple of things about James' epistle. Epistle is a letter, and unlike most of the epistles in the New Testament, this one is not directed at a specific church. It's directed to Jewish believers scattered about the world, so it's what's known as a universal epistle. And James is probably the least theological of all the epistle writers. He was very focused on practical issues. His book is full of practical issues. This is one of them. Now, most biblical scholars believe that James, that wrote this epistle, is James, who was the half-brother, human brother of Jesus. And the interesting thing about it is that none of Jesus's brothers and sisters came to the Lord until after he died and was resurrected. During his public ministry, they didn't accept him. They rejected him. They thought he was crazy, in fact. And so here's James, who after the death and resurrection of Jesus went on to be one of the great church leaders. He was the church leader in the Christian church in Jerusalem and was quite a recognized character in the New Testament. The outrage of Jesus' own family rejecting him is very clearly pointed out by his frustrated declaration recorded in the Gospel of Mark, when he says, a prophet is not without honor except in his hometown and among his own relatives and in his own household. So he's saying a prophet is with honor unless he's in his hometown, among his own relatives, or in his own household, and there they have no use for him. interesting concept, but that was certainly the case in Jesus' own family. So we're in James chapter 3 tonight, and I'm going to read, it's just a few verses, I'm going to read them, and then we'll go back, we'll slow down and go back verse by verse and examine some of the powerful things he says. So starting in verse 1 of James chapter 3. Let not many of you become teachers, my brethren, knowing that as such we will incur a stricter judgment. For we all stumble in many ways. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he's a perfect man, able to bridle the whole body as well. Now if we put the bits into the horses' mouths so that they will obey us, we direct their entire body as well. Look at the ships also, though they are so great and are driven by strong winds, are still directed by a very small rudder wherever the inclination of the pilot desires. So also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. See how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire. And the tongue is a fire, the very world of iniquity. The tongue is set among our members as that which defiles the entire body and sets on fire the course of our life and is set on fire by hell. That's what James thinks of the tongue. For every species of beasts and birds, of reptiles and creatures of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by the human race. But no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil and full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in the likeness of God. That was me a week ago. From the same mouth come both blessing and cursing, my brethren. These things ought not to be. Does a fountain send out from the same opening both fresh and bitter water? Can a fig tree, my brethren, produce olives, or a vine produce figs? Neither can salt water produce fresh. So he makes some very important observations, and starting right at verse 1, he puts it on anyone who professes to teach. And these were Bible teachers. These are people who are teaching the Bible, who are leading congregations. Anyone who teaches is going to be subject to a stricter judgment because they use words to teach. And with the thousands of words we speak every day, we're really at risk. So they will incur a stricter judgment. The other thing about verse 1 that I think is important is to say, let not many of you become teachers, my brethren. This passage isn't directed at non-believers. This passage is directed to believers. So he's giving these strong words to believers because, as we all know, hurtful words aren't just reserved to people who don't believe. We're all guilty of them. So then we go into verse 2. For we all stumble in many ways because we're imperfect. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to bridle the whole body as well. A couple of interesting things. Although this says man in the New American Standard Version, the root Greek word is male. So this is primarily directed at the guys. And I think it's based on probably the reality that guys are more inclined to be hurtful and harsh with people than women are. Men typically play hardball, and it seems that that's an issue of males. It seems that it's more shocking to hear harsh words coming from a woman's mouth. Now, we know exceptions to that rule on both sides, but it's interesting to me that this passage is directed to the guys, So he says in verse 2, we all stumble in many ways, but if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he's a perfect man. What he means by a perfect man is spiritually mature, of full moral and spiritual growth. Now, really none of us are that. We're not perfect, and so therefore we do stumble in what we say. And I think verse 2 actually embodies the essence of the whole 12 verses. That's really what the whole 12 verses is about, that we stumble through our speech. Now we roll into verses 3 through 5, and the concept in these 3 verses are that the tongue is small but powerful. small but powerful. In proportion of the rest of our body, our tongue's about so big, and yet it controls our whole body in many respects. And James uses 3 images to make the point. In verse 3, now if we put the bits into the horses' mouths so that they will obey us, we direct their entire body as well. You look at a powerful stallion. An example I read was 17 hands high. And you can control that stallion with a 6-inch bit in his mouth. Now the bit, is placed in the horse's mouth behind its teeth, and it's connected to reins, and the reins are how the rider of the horse communicate with the horse. In other words, make him do what he wants the horse to do. So a powerful horse can be controlled by a 6-inch bit. In verse 4, look at the ships. Also, though they are great and are driven by strong winds, are still directed by a very small rudder wherever the inclination of the pilot desires. Now this was in the era of sailing ships, and so these ships did have massive sails and they were driven by the wind, but they're turned by a very, very small rudder. So a single pilot can direct a very, very large ship even in the face of strong, strong winds. Now, James uses these examples and draws the analogy between horses, ships, and the tongue. In verse 5, when he says, so also, the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. See how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire. Pretty powerful word picture. So also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. Think of a devastating forest fire. How often have we read that a devastating forest fire that destroys thousands of acres is actually attributable to a spark, a very small fire? And the point James is making is just as a grand forest fire can be ignited by a small spark, we can ignite a great emotional forest fire by an errant word. How many devastating consequences have we seen as a result of harsh words? The tongue can ruin a reputation. We've all seen that. Yeah. Yeah. You got it. You got it. And in a moment, I'll show you why you have it exactly. A tongue can also rupture a friendship. How many friendships have been destroyed by the power of the tongue? What about spoiling a tender moment? What about embarrassing, humiliating, and shaming? In fact, in American schools, bullying has reached epidemic proportions. And I saw a statistic that 160,000 kids a day refuse to go to school because of their fear of being bullied. So bullying is a major, major issue. And then there's the tragic story of Karen Carpenter. Some of us, older people, will remember Karen Carpenter. She was a well-known singer of the 70s. She and her brother, they were part of the duo The Carpenters. She died at the age of 32, tragically. Complications of anorexia.
Alone in the closet.
What's that?
She's alone in the closet.
And Downey.
Tragic, tragic story. So her obsession with diet and weight loss was solely driven by bullying when she was a teenager. She was known as Richard's chubby sister. She hated it so badly that she started dieting, and then her family, who was thrilled at the change in her appearance, encouraged it. And so she became so obsessive about her weight and her diet that she killed herself eventually by the time she was 32. So how many Karen Carpenter stories are there in the world? There have got to be many, many, many Karen Carpenter stories. Taking us back to verse 5, see how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire. It doesn't seem like much. Richard's chubby sister. Doesn't seem, I mean, it's tacky, but it doesn't seem horrible. But that was the beginning of a problem that led to this woman's death. great forest fire set aflame by a small spark. So now we go to verses 6 through 8, and the concept in these verses is that the tongue may be small, but it's dangerous. It's dangerous. So 6 through 8. And the tongue is a fire, the very world of iniquity. The tongue is set among our members as that which defiles the entire body and sets on fire the course of our life and is set on fire by hell. For every species of beasts and birds or reptiles and creatures of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by the human race. But no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil and full of deadly poison. When you think of Karen Carpenter's death, you begin to appreciate just how dangerous the tongue can be to the speaker as well as to the recipient. So verse 6, the tongue is dangerous because of the force that drives it. The tongue is a fire, the very world of iniquity. The tongue is set among our members as that which defiles the entire body and sets on fire the course of our life and is set on fire by hell. So look at the progression. Starts with Satan in hell. It inflames the course of our life and it defiles our entire body. It's rotten. And those hurtful words emanate right at the core of our being. They're really a tool for Satan, for our destruction and for the destruction of everyone we come in contact with. Now verses 7 and 8 are interesting because James shifts to a comparative situation. He just told us that the tongue is set on fire by hell and is uncontrollable. So in verses 7 and 8, he starts comparing us to nature. For every species of beasts and birds, of reptiles and creatures of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by the human race, but no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. When I read those words, I think of a flailing rattlesnake. It's just lashing out, and everybody it can bite. And that's what the tongue is. Uncontrollable, untamable, restless, and full of deadly poison. And because the power of the tongue comes straight from hell, it is full of deadly poison. And we have no ability to control it. I think that's the implicit message in this passage. We can't control our tongue. We multiply words, thousands of words every day, and we're headed for trouble with our words. Only God can give us the power to control our tongue. Remember what verse 2 said, if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he's a perfect man. Well, obviously none of us are perfect, so we can't control what we say. I think our only hope is to pray like David prayed in Psalm 141:3, King David, who prayed for godly intervention over his spoken words. This is what he said, set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth, keep watch over the door of my lips. Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth, keep watch over the door of my lips. I think it's our only way out is to commit our words to God, because it is so easy to go off the highway with our words. So now verses 9 to 12, we're rounding the bend here. I think the concept in these 4 verses is that the tongue is small, but it's very revealing. And this is the eerie part of it. This is the eerie part of it for me. 9, with it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come both blessing and cursing, my brethren. These things ought not to be. Does a fountain send out from the same opening both fresh and bitter water? Can a fig tree, my brethren, produce olives, or a vine produce figs? Neither can salt water produce pure. You know, at the beginning of the study I mentioned Jesus' words in Matthew 12. The mouth speaks out of that which fills the heart. Unfortunately, for all of us, our tongues reveal the condition of our hearts. When we speak with biting words, we have an angry heart. Very clear. And so the irony here is not only do we sin by what we say, but by what we say, we reveal just how sinful we are. It's kind of a double whammy here. Great irony. So this is what Paul has to say about it. It's another great example of how revealing our speech is. This is in Romans 2:1. For in that which you judge another, you condemn yourself. For you who judge practice the same things. So what Paul is saying is, follow somebody around that's always judging someone else, and you will know what is in that person's heart. You want to know what a person's all about? Just listen to them. You'll figure it out pretty easily. And unfortunately, we're all walking broadcast machines because of our words. And a person with wisdom and discernment can listen to our words and figure us out. That's kind of unnerving to me. I'd rather wear a mask and nobody be able to figure me out. But unfortunately, we talk. And so a person of discernment can understand what's really going on in our hearts. I think the sin of our spoken words is bizarre, indeed. I think what it gives away in our hearts is the chaos of hell. So in verse 9, James says, with it, with our tongue, we bless our Lord and curse men who've been made in the likeness of God. This makes no sense. Lord Jesus, bless me, Father. I worship you. You're my Lord and Savior. And then 5 minutes later, I'm cursing someone who's been made in the image of God. Makes no sense at all. In verses 11 and 12, James measures our words by reference to nature. He basically says, go out into nature. The animals can be tamed, but we can't tame the tongue. So what we're doing is extremely unnatural. And once again in verse 12, he says, my brethren. So he's directing this to the followers of Jesus, to Christians. So the paradox of our tongue is not really replicated in nature. It's unnatural. It's straight from Satan. And interestingly, James draws no conclusion. He just makes the statement. And he draws no conclusion because no conclusion is necessary. It really is self-evident. Conclusions are obvious from the comparisons of our words and our tongues to the laws of nature. But unlike James, I'm going to try to draw some conclusions so we can try to make sense of this. I think one conclusion is the problem of our tongue is a paradox indeed. Now, a paradox is something that's absurd, self-contradictory, and makes no sense. That's exactly what our words do. They're absurd frequently, especially words spoken in anger or words spoken to hurt someone. Absurd, self-contradictory. We praise Jesus, but then we curse someone who's made in the likeness of God. And it just makes no sense. It makes us look like fools. And the reason for that is that the problem comes straight from Satan. And it's Satan using our tongues as a means of using us. Satan using our tongues as a means of using us. So what are we to do about this problem? I think the book of Proverbs offers a couple of good suggestions, and James himself offers one. So in Proverbs 10:19, when there are many words, transgression is unavoidable, but he who restrains his lips is wise. So what Solomon says in Proverbs is, when we talk too much, transgression is inevitable. When we multiply words, so Solomon's advice to us would be, stop talking so much. You'll cut the risk down immeasurably just by not talking so much. Proverbs 17:28, Solomon again. Even a fool, when he keeps silent, is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he's counted prudent. So the message there is,
What's that?
it's 17:28 Proverbs. Even a fool, when he keeps silent, is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he's counted prudent. So I think the message there is, we're going to really think before we speak, because we may end up being that fool. And then James himself gives us some good advice in chapter 1 at verse 19. What he says is that everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. It's a kind of a good model to follow. Be quick to hear. When you're in a group of people and everyone's yakking, you just sit back and be quick to hear. And be slow to speak, and certainly slow to anger. So, in a sense, it may sound like I'm saying the only way we're going to control this is by just shutting up, not talking. And that's not practical. There's got to be another way out of it. So maybe there is some practical advice, although I kind of like stop talking. Some practical advice, maybe there's 3 questions we can become ingrained to answer mentally before we speak. Is what I'm about to say true? A lot of damage is done by disinformation. People out talking, gossiping about things that just aren't true. And of course, a lot of damage comes from that. So maybe the first golden rule of our spoken word is what I'm about to say true? Secondly, is what I'm about to say necessary? This kind of goes to the stop talking so much. I think sometimes we talk just to hear our brains rest. We don't really have anything important to say, but we just talk and talk and talk. So maybe we should ask ourselves, is what I'm about to say necessary? And if it's not, maybe we shouldn't say it. And then the final thing is, we'll kind of state it in a positive way, is what I'm about to say helpful? Is what I'm going to say helpful to the person who's going to hear it? And if it's not helpful, maybe we ought to just move on. I think one final golden rule of speech would be we should probably refuse to participate in or even listen to gossip, because it's never profitable for anybody. So what do you all think? It's kind of a scary prospect to me when you think about where all these words that we speak come from, and when they're negative and hurtful, what they're empowered by. And then I think about what Jesus says in Matthew 12, that the mouth speaks out of that which fills the heart. It makes me want to think about my words and examine my heart and wonder just what kind of a picture I'm revealing about myself by my words. So I'm hoping that you all tonight have some good ideas about how to deal with this problem, because it's not an easy problem to deal with.
We're afraid to say it.
What's that?
We're afraid to say it.
Afraid to say? It's not helpful. Sharmila.
Okay, so I learned that like when you are judging people, there's a finger pointing at them, and there's 3 pointing back at me,
Good.
and there's 1 pointing up at God. And the 3 pointing back at me that bothered me, but the 1 pointing up at God bothered me the most. And it was so interesting because when I was in like my community, I was known as CNN. And I took a lot of pride in that. I knew everything that was going on, and I ran my mouth about everyone and everything because I had to show how bad other people were, so I could look good. And you know, I didn't see how hurtful that was until I came out here. And once I started to like clean my own act up, I started to like not want to do that as much. Like not attack other people, not put them down, not gossip about them, not spread anything about them. And I decided to stop gossiping. And once I stopped gossiping, people stopped talking about me as well. And it was so interesting how those 2 overlapped, you know. And then I had to work on my judgment. And I still work on not judging. But I started doing this prayer where it's like this it's a long prayer, and it's like Jesus, I have holes, and I have flaws, and I have mistakes, and so do others. But Jesus, help me to see others the way you see me, and as you see them. And I'm trying to do that every day, and it's helping my judgment a lot.
Yeah, those are all really good comments. And I think this 1 finger pointing, 3 fingers pointing back, that's Romans 2:1. For in that which you judge another, you condemn yourself. one finger pointing, three pointing back at you. It's really amazing. It's really amazing. You know, we've all known what we call self-righteous people, people that judge everyone. Those people are generally incredibly insecure with incredible low self-esteem. So it was what you were just saying. I know low self-esteem. And by judging others, you build your own self-esteem up. You elevate yourself at the expense of others. And all of this is revealed by our words. It's all revealed
It's like
by
the
our
crabs
words.
in a bucket. Have you ever seen crabs in a bucket? One of them tries to climb out, and the other one pulls him down. You know, because he doesn't want anybody to get out ahead of him. So they never make it out of the bucket. You know, if they could work together, they would, but they don't. They just love each other.
And when we think about all this bizarre stuff connected with our speech, it's really easy to see how it's all driven by Satan. I mean, because it's so chaotic and so absurd, making no sense at all and so hurtful, it can come from nowhere other than Satan himself. And we fall prey to it.
I
So
think
we
so.
have to go into a strong defensive mode when it comes to our words. Sadiq.
I think some of it, well, I think most of it comes from our own self-ego, or we call it nafs in Islam, which is the negative part of it you're supposed to learn to control. If someone says something to you or does something and you feel that you're so superior or you're so this or you show that you have to react to that. How dare you say this to me, or how dare you not do what I asked you to do? Then I need to lash out with you to punish you. It's like, why do I feel I have the right to punish somebody who doesn't do what I want them to do? Okay, if I'm in a group of people and we're having a discussion about how to move a project along, and somebody disagrees with me and I jump up on and want to cut them down because how dare you not see that Sadiq is always right? You know, that's my ego. That's not God saying, wait a minute, you know, everybody has an opinion and you can learn from somebody else at the same time. You know, appreciating what you just said, but I think maybe we could go about it a different way. You get better cooperation that way, but so many times I read, like on my Facebook and stuff like that, I have a family member that's always putting out this militant stuff, you know. Today I read something quoting Patrick Henry, okay, give me liberty or give me death. And I had to come back right away and say, wait a minute, who out there among you is somebody's property now? Who out there among you, first of all you have to understand what the word liberty means. Liberty just means being able to move about unrestrained. It's not freedom we're talking about liberty now. You go back to 1984, which I was talking to you about earlier, how words mean so much. And that's the other thing. In 1984, in order for the government to control you, they created a new language called Newspeak, where words like freedom had no meaning. They wanted the masses to get to a point where they could not understand concepts like freedom and liberty and things like that. So that they wanted to get the language down to about 10 words. And so nobody would understand. They had words like the ministry of love was actually the ministry of war. And the ministry of poverty was actually, like they had it all mixed up. So it got to the point where you would believe anything the government told you because you didn't understand those words. And when you, as a teacher, when you teach a child to read, and reading is magic. It's a magical thing for somebody to truly be able to read. California is 49th in the schools in the country. And I think a large of that's because comprehension. It's not that you can't, I can read the word, I can see Sally run. But if I don't know what run means, I'm just sight reading, which is the first thing you teach a child when you teach them read. You teach them sight reading so they can understand how to say the word, but then you have to understand the meaning, comprehension behind it. And we don't comprehend 90% of the words that we hear. That's why politicians can fool you. That's why that salesman can fool you. That's why when he went in the military, everybody said, my recruiter lied to me. He didn't lie to you. He said, yeah, you can have any job you want to if the military has a need for that right now. Okay, you missed that last part because you heard what you wanted to hear. So words are very powerful.
Incredibly powerful. And we all have words. We're all conversant. And James says we have to have responsibility.
Absolutely.
For those words. Liz.
I'm going to tell a story, and hopefully Jerry understands this was a long time ago and things are very different now. But
I thought she was going to say something about me.
years ago, and it winds up to be my lesson, not Jerry's. So years ago, Jerry got the car that he has now. and it broke down one time. And it broke down, and he had it in front of the house. And he went to work and needed somebody to take him to work. And he told me that the car had broken down. And then he got somebody to bring him back to work. And then the next day got somebody else to take him to work. Got somebody else to bring him back from work. And so forth. So this went on for several days, and I was waiting for Jerry to have a day off to get the car fixed. So he finally has a day off, and I called him and I said, "What's going on with the car?" And he said, "Well, it still doesn't work." Like it was just gonna fix itself sitting in front of the house, right? And I was like, oh, Jerry, okay, today you got a day off, so I'm gonna call AAA. We're gonna get AAA out there. I want you to get in the car with AAA. I'm going to meet you over at the dealership, so forth. So I pick up the phone, call the dealership, and within 45 seconds had Jerry a loaner car. They were going to give him a loaner car. We get the car over to the dealership to get it fixed. And I'm driving over to the dealership. He's in with the tow truck driver, driving over there. And I'm having this conversation with God. And I'm doing the ugly conversation in my mind. I'm thinking, why did Jerry wait 3 days to do this? Why can't he just pick up the phone and call and get the car fixed, And I'm running this whole thing through in my mind, and I swear to you, almost audibly, not really audibly, but almost audibly, I hear God say, because Jerry's good at things that you aren't, Liz. And I was like, oh. Okay, so, being responsible over a car may be my thing, but he's fabulous at things I'm not at. He's fabulous at thoughtfulness and generosity and art and all kinds of things. And so that was the beginning of a real lesson for me. And I've since that day I've tried to see. I don't always do it, but I've tried to see everybody's value for the way God made them, not just through my lens, not just the way God made me. That's similar to what Steve was saying, why can't you do it Liz's way? So, but now Jerry gets his car fixed and all that. He doesn't need all that anymore. So he's come a long way. It's been years.
What would we do with that? Sally?
I wanted to share, there are different vulnerabilities in people, when it comes to different stages in their lives. Back in 1990, 91, 92, 93, I did not know what bully was. I did not know what gossip was. But when I started getting we called names out there, and everybody just called me names. It was more like a tomboy names, like a virgin, making fun of me, all these things they would do to me. I never took it. It's like I bounced everything off of me. I had like this shield that was protecting me from absorption of negativity words. And I've always lived my life like that. And now I have a daughter, and she's the opposite of me. She was being bullied. That she almost took her life several times, and she's she judges and criticizes. That's something I don't remember ever doing. So it depends. I guess the life, your stage of life, and your vulnerability, whether you're strong enough or you're weak. But with God's help and Him as your Father, I think you carry His strength and you can fight and rebound those words.
Ultimately, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. Aaron, you said something earlier, and I was going to come back to it, and then I didn't. Do you remember what your question was? It was a very good point. Huh?
It was about boasting.
Boasting.
Yeah, I was talking about boasting. I don't know. For me, what you asked, I've been doing that. I love how this is talking about taming the tongue. Not necessarily my tongue. I'm like, well, let's just other people's tongue. I'm like, it's just the music I'm listening to. It's not a big deal. It's like totally cursing and like demeaning the women. I straight up just been listening to that all the time. I know it's not right. I know, but it's like I'm telling myself, it's not that big a deal. It's not me, and I'm still practicing my principles. Well, I'm really not. I'm really not practicing any of my principles, because it says just right here, it says, people get judged. As a Christian, I'm going to get judged more strictly. So I go around and I say, hey, I love, Charla is a really good person, and I really respect you, Charla. And I'm just using an example of any woman, but I'm going to go over here and I'm going to listen to this. I'm I'm gonna go listen to this song, you know, and you know, I don't know. I mean, it's really hard for me. I gotta explain to it by Pastor. This is actually Pastor Davis. Book right here. He said I'm at like where, you know, I know I don't want this anymore in my life. I know like I can't find any pleasure in the old things I used to do in my life at all. It just makes me feel sad afterwards. I'm like, oh crap, I screwed up again, you know. But I'm not quite over here yet. You know, I know that there's something better, but I feel like there's just a part of me that's like being cool. Like it's like I'm just in the middle, and it's really frustrating sometimes. You know, I don't know. I'm looking at this like this isn't a coincidence that I'm hearing this right now. You know, because I mean, what would have happened if I wouldn't have showed up today? What would have happened if I would have just said, "Oh, well, I'm not making it here on time. I needed to hear this because, you know, it takes one little spark to set the whole force on fire, and that's my spark right now. I mean, it's building. I mean, it just starts with one little compromise. And I know that sounds extreme to some other people, but I think for us, you know, those little behaviors is what leads, for a guy like me, I mean, I can't speak for anybody else, I just said, for a guy like me, those little behaviors and those little compromises of my character lead me to compromise bigger things and other values in my life. And then, I mean, I might as well just catch myself on fire.
You gotta let that guy teach the Bible.
Yeah, and you know, if it makes you feel any better, anyone that's being honest is going to say, yeah, I experienced it.
I'm falling short.
We all do it.
I mean, I've been falling short lately. I mean, my actions aren't meeting up to. I mean, I'm really, you know, I'm not gonna be too hard on myself because, you know, I'm still trying. You know, and I'm noticing these things. I'm not just pushing it off, but you know, there is like this point in my life where it's just like, you know, you're either in or you're out. You can't be like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You know, David told me that too. You gotta be all in. And I know right now that I'm not doing that. So I think that's extremely important for a Christian to not just be a Christian when they gotta go to Bible study or when they gotta be in front of people. You know, I gotta do it in my life.
The whole purpose of what we're doing here is we're trying to just change our hearts and live every day the way Jesus wants us to live. It's not about coming here, listening to a Bible study. It's about changing our hearts. And tonight's Bible study kind of hits that very, very squarely. But don't be too hard on yourself because we're all imperfect. And like Paul said in Philippians, forgetting what lies behind and reaching forward to what lies ahead. So, you know, we mess up, we got to just put it behind us and move on, reach forward to what lies ahead. And it's a process we go through our whole lives. We never get there until we get there.
Can I just say that, like David, I say every day, God is my life, my ears, my mouth. In fact, verse 1 I'll see personal one, and it's like, just before he died on the cross, he said, brothers and sisters,
Yeah, I'm glad this young man brought that up. I really am. That's cool. That is really cool. Because I forgot all about that way, but I got something.
We're all imperfect. Exactly. So Jacob, the person from whose mouth I've never heard a harsh word, what do you have to contribute to this?
I was thinking about what Aaron said.
Louder.
Louder.
Can't hear it.
Louder?
I'm going to stand up.
Thank you. Because I know you're going to say something profound, so we want to hear it.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I think about Aaron, what you said. And I know the Bible says we're not supposed to look bad, getting what lies behind. But I think sometimes when I have slid down that slippery slope and I find my face in mud, more than sometimes. A lot of times I feel like if I look bad, I started to compromise.
How you got there?
I was like, whoops, I kept that thought going. Whoops, I looked at that too long. Whoops, whoops, whoops,
Yeah.
whoops. Bam.
It's a progression, isn't it?
Exactly. But thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Sadiq, you started to say something.
Aaron is his name, right?
Yeah.
When Aaron brought that up, it just like, boom. Teaching back in Jersey, I'm teaching at a high school. It's mostly Portuguese and Spanish students. I'm in the library, and every 5 seconds I hear the N-word this, the N-word that, the N-word this, nigga that. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm in the librarian's sitting right there, and they're just like loudly. And I'm like, go. And they look at me like, what's wrong, what's wrong?
What did I say?
I said, do you hear what you're saying?
Yeah.
And see, you have to constantly be on guard for that. I was in a classroom with another African American instructor in a special ed class. I came to cover that class. And the kids were doing the same thing in there. Blah, 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 N-word, this, N-word. I said, oh, my ears. And they were like, what's wrong, Mr. Sadiq? And she said, he doesn't like you using that word. I don't like you using it. What about you?
Yeah.
And see, guys would come to me and they say, hey, what's up, dog? I say, I'm not a dog. I don't walk on 4 legs. Don't call, I'm not your dog. See, you got to constantly, and they don't like that. And the other thing in my classroom, when the kids would say, they said, I'm done. I said, really? Somebody cooking you? And they say, what are you talking about? And somebody would say finish. Because I always say, you ever see the done line at the end of a race? I say, if somebody's doing something, you're done. If somebody's cooking you, yeah, you're done. But if you completed your sign, you're finished. See, language means so much. And that's what, go back to 1984. If you let your people take away your language from you, you're destroyed.
Yeah. Yes.
So my name is Alex. Basically, we're talking about bullying.
Bullying.
I can relate to that.
Talk about like you do on the bus.
Yeah.
We want to hear what you say.
I know we talk very loud and obnoxious, but I tell the truth as it is. Straight. Some people doesn't like to hear the truth. I like to tell the truth as it is. So I've been bullied. I've been bullied since I was 6-year-old. And what did the bullet can cause? The bullet got me into the crime, literally. They were asking me to bring first the toys. Then they were asking me to bring the money. How I will bring the money? I started stealing from my father the money. And then they said they wanted the toys. And then I started revenging that, and I went to be almost a criminal, young criminal. I started stealing stuff, all this. So then I realized I have to fight the bully where it hurt them the most. So I gonna do whatever they told me I could not accomplish. So it came the positive influence. And I've been bullied by what they call it, I'm writing my comic book for real. I said bullied by PhDs and mentors by masters, which is in a figurative way. Those kids, smart kids that I was surrounded, they all bullied me. They all showed to me that I don't know physics at the age of 12 and all this. So I went to talk to their parents. And I discovered that I know more about their parents than they know. And they were so much ashamed. They were so much ashamed that they never asked their parents how did they learn how to ski? How did they went into tennis? And I was always curious. So I started developing that. My daughter was bullied. She was bullied. We changed 8 schools. 8 schools in 7 years. The guy punched her in a class with a fist into the plexus. That guy later gave the speech in front of the president. Doesn't matter which president. But what happened to that person? He skipped 3 years of classes and he went into drugs. What is happening now? My daughter is trying to help him to stop drugs. My daughter was criticized and she could not go to a top school because of reading comprehension. She was on a 7th grade of reading comprehension on a 4th and a 5th. So they told us this independent commission came over there and said, Okay, so what we did, we put her into the math program and into the learning program. She had to start from scratch. Although she could not read, and although she read only one book, Chronicles of Narnia, which enlightened her, and another book, The Abyss. She wrote 6 books. And one of the books that she wrote at the age of 15 saved her life. She already told us she was contemplating to hang herself. We almost lost my daughter at the age of 15. Why she was bullied? She knew 8 languages. So her English was not perfect. Of course, when you know so many languages, your English is not perfect. So they were picking up on her. She's now studying psychology in a community college. There was a glitch. She could not get into any college. But she is an unofficial school counselor over there.
She's lived it, and now
she can relate to anybody.
Yeah.
I think
And
that-
she is she's gonna be 20. On her graduation came the kids who are freshmen, junior, and sophomore. Everybody wanted to go there because she used her time to mediate, to help them. She was unofficial school counselor. She read people like a book. She can't read book. She wanted to be a doctor, and they realized better to be a psychologist. So sometimes we're so harsh on people. They told me I will never learn English. They make fun of me because I made 20 mistakes when I was 12. And they told me I will never ever learn English. And this hurted me so much. And I wanted to show to them that I will. They wrote over there the white, how I spell, V-I-T-E. And the teacher said, this is example of somebody who will never learn English. And this hurting me so much.
Of course it does. Of course it does.
I had F and D in English in high school. And there I am, sales engineer, and helping people to go on a cruise. Paid to talk over the phone.
What country were you in?
Paid to write articles.
Yeah.
And I did translation of the book, law book, just like that, without blinking. But people thought that I'm not on that level.
Were you in Romania when that happened?
So I could relate to anybody. People who are bullied are a little bit different. They have a big heart. And the other people who doesn't have a big heart, they're jealous. They're jealous of that.
Well, that's the reason that people bully. It's a deficiency.
I was
of
many
trauma.
times in a situation that I didn't know the answer. I prayed. I went to church and people helped me.
I think what you're describing, there's a story in the Old Testament.
I'm sorry that I took too much time.
No. It's thank you for
It
sharing
was very
that.
good, and I think what you're describing, there's a story in the Old Testament where some bad things happened to this guy, Joseph, and instead of just caving to it, he took those bad things and did some great things with it, and was able to save a family, his own family, but an entire nation. And he says to his brothers who did these things to him, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. And I think that that's what you're, with your daughter and with you and so forth, and the things that you went through, what those people meant for evil and try to hurt you, God meant for good, and he used that to turn you into the person that you are, and your daughter into the person that she is.
I used to run Senior Hope, and I went to every single surgery of my residence. I stayed there, and I came first thing in the morning. They thought I was a member of the family. I didn't have to do it. I felt it's my obligation to be with them, to entertain them, and to cheer them up. Because I was raised by my grandparents. My parents never had time for me, but my grandparents had. So I saw in every senior resident my grandparent.
Yeah. Awesome story. Well,
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mark. Hey, you guys all help me. Happy anniversary to Liz and Mark.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Did you like that? You'll come back?
I don't know.
I thought that